Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Shadow of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 3, which is called Past Lives. So a shorter chapter this time out, but still very interesting. Obviously Past Lives, the Avatar fandom loves Past Lives. When I put out my early review content for this book, both the non-spoiler and the spoiler one, the questions that pretty much most people were asking me were, do we learn anything more about Avatar Salai? Do we learn about the Fire Avatar before Kyoshi? Do we learn anything about other past lives? That's the big thing that people want to know. Just all the different avatars. Every Avatar fan loves knowing about different avatars. It's such a cool thing that we have here to know about every avatar in the cycle, if possible. This chapter isn't quite that. It's more of a sort of tease for stuff to come later on. You think that a title like this means that, oh, is this where we get the Kuruk backstory? But not just yet. It's more of a tease of that. So let's get into this. The first thing we start off with is just a few kind of quick notes here of some like world building reveals, I suppose, primarily. We get the name of Jinpa's Bison, which is where they're flying to the Fire Nation on. Its name is Yin Yang, Y-I-N-G-Y-O-N-G. And what's interesting about it is that they don't just be like, oh, he's an air nomad, so he has a bison. They add something a little bit different here. They're like, oh, Yin Yang only has 5 legs instead of the usual 6 that a sky bison usually has, because as a calf, he'd been attacked by a predator and lost his left forelimb. So he sort of flies slightly, you know, off to the side. So Jinpa has to sort of kind of arc them through the path that they have to go on. So it's a little bit different, but it still gets the job done. Just something that makes the animal feel a little bit different here. And you know, just there's a scene later on where like Jinpa calls him like a lazy boy and stuff like that. You get some kind of pet talk later on from him, so you can tell the two really care for each other. So it's a nice relationship. And I suppose the idea that, you know, Yin Yang's already been injured sort of comes into play a little bit later on in the book with something Jinpa does, but that's much later on. The other thing is that Kyoshi, obviously being on a bison again, brings up Peng Peng. And what's interesting here is that basically Peng Peng has sort of been retired. She's been allowed her retirement, and she's off raising her calves at the Southern Air Temple. So just a fun little thing there of, you know, baby bison from Peng Peng. That's a nice little thing to get. Just fun bison information at the very start of the book. Then they're just talking on the way there, and Jinpa mentions like, oh, do you want to stop off at this island that we're going to pass by on the way there? It is said to be the island where Avatar Yang Chen did her first bit of water bending, basically. And Kyoshi's kind of like, oh, Yang Chen, like, actually, yes, I do want to do this. Like, typically she wouldn't. She's not that type of avatar. But Yang Chen, a great avatar. And this begins to come up again, this idea of these great avatars that the world considers to have had an amazing era. And so Yang Chen, of course, Kyoshi wants to go anywhere where the good avatars have been. So that's really cool that we get there. So a little bit of time passes, and then it's like, oh, Jinpa's like, well, the island should be here. There's just this, what way did it describe it? I don't see anything but that dark patch under the surface. And they're like, oh, we can't find it, fair enough. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Kyoshi just hears someone basically say very clearly to her, Kyoshi. And it's obviously Avatar Kuruk. And so what happens is that Kyoshi just sort of immediately freezes up, falls off the bison into the water. And this is how she actually connects to Kuruk here. This comes back later on in the book, this idea of this connection through the water and this place that is significant to avatars. As she falls into the water, you know, she kind of more and more connects with Kuruk. He says Kyoshi, Kyoshi. She continues to drift kind of weightlessly down towards the now revealed to be sunken island. And she actually gets a vision in the water of Avatar Kuruk. And it's mentioned here that, the voice of Kyoshi's immediate predecessor in the Avatar cycle was much louder in the water, his native-born element. It thundered between her ears. The dialogue is, Kyoshi, need your help too. And then again, Kyoshi, you must. I can't. It can pass. And you're kind of wondering, wait, what? What does that mean? And then you go back to what was said to her before by Kuruk at the end of the last book, which was, I need your help. And everyone interpreted this as Kuruk is about to tell her a story of like some sort of threat coming on. And it's like, yes, but there's a step sort of missing from that. First, what this is sort of revealed to be is sort of like he wants to first make this connection to her so that they can actually speak properly. So he needs her help to connect properly. But of course, the issue here is that we know Kyoshi does not like Kuruk. Everything she's heard about him has been terrible, that he is the exact sort of avatar she doesn't want to be. But inadvertently, like, she realizes she's not being the best avatar in sort of a different way. She's being active, but almost like too active in the wrong way. So like she doesn't quite realize it, but that there should be almost more of a connection between the two because of that. Two very flawed avatars versus her feeling the need to like have to go to one of the greats and sort of skip past Kuruk. But very interesting. Before she can properly make the connection, Jinpa dives down, of course, after her and kind of gets her out of the water because he thought she was just drowning because she was staying under the water for like a good amount of time. Because they sort of imply here the idea of like, if Kuruk's spell could have kept her from drowning indefinitely, it was broken now. So it was almost like this thing of she's being drawn to this sunken island and she's like allowed to kind of breathe underwater. And they continue with this idea of like she almost forgets that she's a waterbender at times. Like she's still so unused to just immediately incorporating all the other elements in at this point that she's being dragged up to the surface by Jinpa and he's sort of struggling. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, waterbender, just and they're straight up. So that sort of stuff is pretty fun as we go through it. And she's forced to reveal to Jinpa here that, like, yeah, it was Kuruk, he was trying to contact me. And he's like, this is big news, like, that you're making your first connection with a past avatar. Like, you can't just speak of this so casually. This is important, but it also looked like you were having a fit. Like, it looked like she was in pain experiencing this connection. And they basically reveal the idea here of, in a way, because Kyoshi doesn't like Kuruk, she's almost like blocking the connection to him. So him trying to connect with her is like forcing the connection to the point where it sort of hurts her a bit that he tries to do this. But it's about her realizing that she actually has to talk to Kuruk. Because we know as fans that this is the way the cycle works. To connect to the past lives, you first have to connect to the avatar before you, because that's the way it works. It's not just that you can pick and choose. Once you've made the initial connection, then you can sort of do that. But it is a chain all in a row. Before Kyoshi is Kuruk, and then before Kuruk is Yang Chen. So you have to go through Kuruk to get to Yang Chen, and because she's blocking Kuruk, she can't get to the avatars that she wants. So that's what we kind of get through here. Yeah, we're getting towards the kind of good stuff here. So, yeah, she notes, like, at the end of the last book, at the Sudden Air Temple, he had the gall to ask her for help before dissipating just as quickly. She'd been left not knowing what to do with, like, a useless vision. But she's not realizing that Kuruk is trying his hardest to communicate with her, but because she's blocking it, he can only get a little bit through. So then she reveals that, like, oh, she considers herself almost like a spiritual failure because she's been trying to reach out to the previous generations of avatars by meditating in sacred places of the Southern Air Temple, wayside shrines of the Earth Kingdom dedicated to great avatars like Yang Chen and Salai. Now, as far as I'm aware, that is the only mention, I think, to Salai in the entire book. So it may be mentioned later on again, but we don't learn anything about Salai of note. Now, it's up to you as to whether you interpret this sentence as meaning that Salai is an Earth avatar. I'll read it out again, just, to see if you are connecting the fact that she says, oh, Air Temples with Yang Chen and then Earth Kingdom with Salai, or if it's just shrines for avatars regardless of kingdom. Kyoshi tried reaching out to previous generations of the Avatar cycle by meditating in the sacred places of the Southern Air Temple, wayside shrines of the Earth Kingdom, dedicated to the great avatars like Yang Chen and Salai. I think what puts a twist into this to the point where we can't say for sure Salai is an Earth Kingdom avatar is just that Yang Chen has basically quote-unquote shrines to her in the Earth Kingdom with regards to the comic The Rift. The sacred air nomad land, the Yang Chen festival, is on Earth Kingdom land. That is, like, I suppose, wayside shrines, basically, would be that sort of cliffside type area of the Rift. They might be referring to that, but the fact that they specifically point out, like, locations in two kingdoms, to me, sort of suggests that. But do they also mention that as just being the two locations she's been to? She ended the last book in the Air Temples, and then she's been back in the Earth Kingdom. By default, she can't have gone to the Water Tribes because then she could have gone to see Rangi up in the north, and she hasn't been to the Fire Nation because she's only going there now. So I don't know if you can say for sure that Salai is an Earth Kingdom avatar. You also don't get if it's a guy or a girl. I think most people are interpreting the name as perhaps being male, but I don't know for sure. Spots of natural beauty atop mountains and next to flowing rivers. So, rivers, mountains, she's bringing most of the elements in there. And she just notes that, she'd been fully prepared to just experience silence everywhere she went, because she doesn't consider herself to be spiritual. But she actually pretty much reveals that every time she did connect to Kuruk, but only in these fragments. And she sort of inadvertently broke off that connection. It was Kuruk and only Kuruk, because Kyoshi expects to be able to just talk to any avatar in the cycle, because she doesn't know the full details yet. And it was just and only Kuruk, every single time. The results were always the same. She would reach inwardly, attempt to harmonize with her past, and be met by the blotchy form of the water avatar, spitting garbled nonsense. And so she just, stopped it after that. Because it was sort of hurting her, I suppose, in a way. And she just notes that, she didn't need her legitimacy doubted any more than it already was, which is why she's never mentioned it to anyone, because if she has a fit every time she tries to connect to an avatar, that's not going to look good for her either way. And she just explains that to Jinpa. Every often I'll see a little bit of his voice, see a vision of him, but I can never tell what he's trying to say. He thinks it's the most important thing in the world, of course. And she's like, fine, I'll try and figure it out, but there's other stuff that we have to do. She really snaps at Jinpa. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't really have a response to this. He sort of takes the abuse and just goes along with it. But Kyoshi does realize she's kind of a little bit too far here and does apologize. I'm sorry, Jinpa, I'm really sorry. I have no right to speak to you like that. I wish you were serving a worthier avatar. And she's really honest when she says that. He doesn't say anything in response to this, but it speaks to just that idea of her considering herself sort of a failure as the avatar. Which, again, it's so interesting that she then still thinks Kuruk is so unworthy to speak to, yet she's feeling that way herself, whereas arguably that makes him the perfect avatar to speak to, rather than an avatar she thinks is one of the greats who might criticize her for being like this. But okay, they're now sort of floating on the water. So Kyoshi sticks her head back down under the water and looks at the sunken atoll. And at this point, she makes the connection. The reason this place has gone from being an island that Yang Chen learned waterbending on for the first time to now being sunken is that this is the place, as mentioned in the first book by, I think it was Jianzhu, or was it Kelsong who said it? Either way, one of them explained to her that when Kuruk went to master the Avatar state, he went to an island to practice, and he basically destroyed the island. This is that island. It's one and the same. So that's the significance here. Yang Chen learned waterbending here, so there's a sort of waterbending connection sort of by default. Then Kuruk had an experience here. He connected to the Avatar state, I suppose, for the first time and destroyed the island. And now Kyoshi, who needs to make a connection to a water avatar as her first connection, is here as well. So this sunken atoll ends up being a very important sort of place spiritually, and it will come back to this later on in the book as well. But she just notes here, Kyoshi recognized the telltale marks of destruction well. This was Yang Chen's island. It was the same place where Kuruk and his companions had gone so he could practice going into the Avatar state for the first time. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they'd chosen a location associated with Yang Chen to receive spiritual assistance from the Great Air Avatar, but Kuruk, in his lapse of control, had destroyed the atoll and sunk it below the waves. A spot holy to Yang Chen and the air nomads was gone because of his carelessness, and she pulled herself back onto the saddle. As she pulled herself back onto the saddle, Kyoshi tried to model herself after Jinpa's calm. Some very unkind opinions were running through her head, and right now, the less she thought about Kuruk, the better. So this is presenting this idea of we as the audience, we just want to get that Kuruk backstory. What is he trying to actually tell her here? Tell us Kuruk's story. There's clearly something going on here. But Kyoshi, because she's being so dismissive of Kuruk as being the failure avatar, of she already thinks quite poorly of him because of his sort of pursuit of Heiran after she was married, and him being inactive as the avatar, sort of causing a lot of what she's now having to deal with. And now she's found out that he's destroyed an island that was significant to Yang Chen. Her opinion on him is just going further and further down. And then to find out that he's the only one who will attempt to connect with her, it's just not what she wants. And it's frustrating as reading it, because you know that she has to make this connection, but she's refusing to do it. It's a great build as the book goes on, as you finally get the reveal of her making the connection, and the reveal from Kuruk actually coming out. But I think it's one of those chapters, like I said, it's a relatively short one, but I love that detail of just a little line mentioned in the first book of just tiny island, no one lived on it, Kuruk wrecked it in the first book, is now brought back as this thing that Kyoshi sees as a visual example of why she doesn't like Kuruk and doesn't want to speak to him. In addition to the little details about the bison at the start and so on, Kyoshi's sort of slightly fractured relationship with Jinpa, of just pretty much just her criticizing herself, but Jinpa actually saying nothing, not being particularly critical of her, just kind of being I think you should take, trying to connect a little bit more seriously type stuff. But yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, fragments of that. Yeah, they're all the notes I pretty much have. And then, yeah, Salai, they don't really mention anything about him as far as I remember. Again, we're going to go through every chapter, so every mention of Salai in the book, if there is any more, I'll bring it up. But as far as I'm aware, that is, I think, the only one. So about the best you can take from that is that, once again, he is considered a great avatar, like Yang Chen, similar type of eras, I suppose. And he potentially is Earth Kingdom, but I don't know if you can properly take that from the sentence that I read out. So they're my thoughts on this chapter. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.